Parents who have adopted an older child, 5 and up, how has it gone for you? Do you regret it, or would you recommend other parents considering adopting looking into an older child? Story 1. Adopted a child who was 11 when I was 21. He was my wife's younger cousin, and his household was marred with substance abuse, filth, instability, and mental health issues. Knew it was bad, but didn't know how bad. Took him, 11, and his brother, 14, for a summer once, just to give them a break from what I thought was just a dirty house with an overwhelmed parent, until I took them back the week before school started and saw the filth firsthand. The smell and random people coming in and out, the wreckage we were about to have to leave them in, the fact that in this time his Xbox and games I had hand-me-downed him has been sold along with their TV. The two had one mattress on the floor, and the younger one said, "I can't wait to go back to school." And when I asked why, he said, "Because then I get to eat every day like when I'm at your house." I told him just to get back into the car. His mother never even called to ask why he or his brother didn't come home until tax season, to make sure we didn't claim them on our taxes, etc. Never wished him a happy birthday, Christmas, or anything. My wife and I grew up very quickly. We worked hard and got full custody about a year later when he was 12. He grew up healthy and happy, successful with great grades and a good head on his shoulders. His brother was 14, lived with us for the first year, and then would go back and forth trying to help his mom get her life together before returning again. But for the most part, during those years, the younger child we had full custody of, and the older child came and went as he needed. It wasn't until years later, when the younger of the two moved out with his friends instead of taking our offer to go to college right after school, and began having substance abuse issues of his own, that we learned the extent of the abuse he had endured at home for nearly his entire childhood and kept inside. Sexual and physical for years, starting when he was about 5 from his mother's friends and boyfriends, and even a family member due to their terrible situation. It was heartbreaking. He ended up going through a pretty severe addiction period in his early to mid-20s, and regardless of what we tried and how many small successes we've worked with him to reach, he always ends up in a severe depression and turning back to drugs again. The last time I talked to him, about a week ago, I told him I loved him and would help him get into a very nice rehab community when he's ready, and help him get a good job and a place for himself, but only when he's ready to be clean. And until then, we simply can't do anything for him. And it was hard to do. I'm in my second half of my 30s now. Have 3 children in grade school who need me as he did then, and who also love him. Our oldest looks up to him as a big brother. But unfortunately, we have to keep our distance a bit so that they don't have to see close up the ugly side of addiction in someone they love. Now that he's an adult in his mid-20s himself, making these choices, we can't have any real relationship other than the occasional call or letter until he's done. He loves them too, but he's got some demons that we can't possibly understand, and until he's ready to get help for them or for his addiction, we don't have much of a relationship. His brother worked hard and straightened their mother out over the years into a functional adult and mother, got her life together, a job, a place, everything, and as adults, never left her. In fact, due to him, his brother spent the last year of his teens sharing our household and hers back and forth, which wouldn't have been possible without him. The older brother and she are roommates now, and we are very proud of him for the man he's become, what he's preserved, and the incredible progress he's made with their mother, and how he stuck by her side, now providing as equals. I never realized it, but he and I really grew up together, only being 5 to 6 years apart in age, and were best friends for years as young adults, even after his younger brother moved out. One of my biggest regrets is somehow letting those days end. He loves his brother too, but his and his mother's relationships with his brother is the same as ours. The delicate balance between helpful and love versus enabling, due to understanding the pain he's probably trying to understand and repress until he's able to beat this. And he will. Nothing is perfect, just what you make of it, I suppose. But it has highlighted to us how important the early years of a child's development are, and how damaging all forms of abuse can be, regardless of how much effort you put into trying to change things afterwards. And also how important it is for a child to have an adult who genuinely cares about them, since sadly, many don't. Would I recommend it? Yes. But be honest with yourself about why you're doing it. And know what you're getting into. You're not getting a good/bad kid. You're getting an opportunity to be a good/bad parent. Children this age need you as much as a baby does. They bring happiness the same as a baby does and also present their own unique challenges, the same as parents do, which is what they're signing up for too without knowing. And most importantly, the reason you're adopting is for them. You get to give your love, time, affection, and a portion of your life and heart too. Would I do it again? Every single time. Story 2. My wife and I adopted an older girl from our state's foster system. The girl was 13 when we adopted her, and we were told she had a rough childhood full of abuse, and she had been diagnosed with general mood disorder. Little did we know that the psychological assessment was done by an unqualified state doctor. This little girl had severe issues that required more care than my wife and I were prepared for. We spent 5 years dealing with fighting, arguing, runaway attempts, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, constant emotional manipulation, constant lying, stealing, etc. She was also in constant contact with their schizophrenic birth mother behind our backs. The woman kept feeding our daughter conspiracy theories and lies, constantly making the situation worse for all of us. We tried the best we could for 5 whole years, trying various different therapists, trying different parenting methods, and seeing different doctors, all to no avail. It wasn't until about 5 months before her 18th birthday that we all had to for committed and we fully got a proper diagnosis. She was diagnosed with bipolar and borderline personality disorder, and we finally had an answer to the years of hell we had all had to go through. We did our best research and learned the proper way to parent a child with these conditions, and things began to improve over the last few months she was with us. But on her 18th birthday, she bailed and we haven't seen her since. That was 5 years ago. Story 3. My pre-adoptive son just moved in 6 weeks ago. He's almost 10. Him getting here has been a bit of a long and wild story, but he's been in care since he was 6. It hasn't been easy, but there are so many older kids who need families. The biggest thing is just to make damn sure you're committed. Your limits, be honest with yourself and your adoption coordinator. Demand honesty from the social workers as well. Ask for psych evaluations and treatment histories. Because if you convince yourself, oh, I can handle this, and change your mind, you are re-traumatizing that child. My son has complex trauma from the years of abuse, but the thing he talks about the most after his meltdowns, having to leave his first pre-adoptive home because he kept losing his temper and throwing things. He's been in 4 to 5 placements, psychiatric residential treatment facilities since then. I work with girls involved in juvenile justice, so I felt uniquely prepared for this situation, and even for me, it's been physically and emotionally exhausting. I'm a single parent and we're in the middle of a global pandemic, so I'm sure that's a factor. If you choose to adopt, there shouldn't be any changing your mind or this is just not working out. Kiddo is a part of your family. My son and I have a little mantra, together forever, even when things get hard, even when things get sad. Story 4. We adopted our eldest daughter at 10. We actually adopted her baby half-sister first. After the mom met us, since we were doing this via foster care, she asked if we'd adopt her other daughter too. She had been in and out of foster care most of her life, and her bio mom selflessly made the decision to let her go for stability and safety. We definitely weren't planning to adopt an older child. We already had a 6-year-old biological child, but after meeting the 10-year-old, we knew we'd want her to be a part of the family. It's been 16 years, and it definitely hasn't been easy. But we have no regrets. We love our daughter like our own. She was challenging to raise the first few years and definitely had some trust issues with us and some deep-seated abandonment issues. Family therapy helped. Every once in a while, like once every few years or so, these issues resurface. She still struggles with depression and anxiety. I'd be lying if I said this doesn't worry me. It does. But she seems to have a handle on it. She's always been incredibly smart and talented. She just finished her master's degree, has had a successful career thus far, and she's engaged to a wonderful man. They're supposed to get married this summer, but now we aren't sure. Thanks, COVID. It's almost odd that she's really excelled at everything she's ever tried. She thinks it's mostly due to luck. Call her, half jokingly, our achiever. Some of her success was due to our parenting, I'm sure, but most of it is just her and how she's wired. I'm proud to be her mom. Story 5. My wife and I are a little older, so when we decided to adopt, we opted for an older child for a host of reasons. One being it made more sense for us financially. Healthy infant adoptions are crazy expensive for average people like us, plus the long waits, etc. And also because our hearts went out for older children whom society genuinely wants to look over and forget. These kids need a home too. We chose to adopt from the foster care system. This meant taking the same set of classes as standard aspiring foster parents. Even though we had no intention of becoming actual foster parents, we learned what they learned and became legitimate foster parents. We took in a troubled 13-year-old girl. I won't tell her personal story of how she got into the system, except to say it was not as one might expect. We stuck through it with her. There was lots of twists and turns in her story, and we found out the hard way that she was not, in fact, clear for adoption months into the process, so we became what we wanted to avoid, foster parents instead of adoptive parents. I'll never forget, during one of the regular scheduled court appearances we were obligated to go to, having the court workers review her story to the court and later having random people sob in the back from listening to it and tell us, "We will pray for you." She was angry at the world for her situation, angry at her bio mom for abandoning her, angry at the system for forgetting her for so many years. She lashed out at us many times as well, thinking we would just give up on her. I'll never forget her slamming the door to her room and screaming at my wife, "I hate you," over and over, and my wife barely holding it together and saying, "I love you anyway," each time. My wife and I had moments of despair when one of us would grow weak and say we couldn't do this anymore, and maybe we should consider giving up. The other would remind us, well, what would we do in this situation if she was our child? And we would nod and press on. One day, about a year and a half in, this child turned to me while I was driving her somewhere and said, "I don't want to go back to my bio mom. I want you. I want you to be my dad." And I, a grown-up man, broke down and wept. The adoption went final when she was 15. Yes, it was that long of a process, but the actual adoption took all of 5 minutes in a judge's chamber, for which this girl quipped, "That's it? Just the stroke of a pen? Hell, I'd have lent you a pen years ago." People who didn't know us back then honestly were surprised to learn she was adopted. She's an honor graduate from high school now and is planning to attend college in the fall for nursing. We couldn't be more proud of this child, our daughter. Story 6. We adopted a 15-year-old girl after raising 3 bio kids to adulthood. It has been good, but quite different from what we expected. 15-year-olds are not fully formed, but almost. She's a nice, smart kid, but also got pregnant and hid it for 4 months. Had a beautiful boy. We expected to finish high school and hold down a part-time job, save some money, which she would need to become independent after graduation, her goal. She moved 1,000 miles away, took up with kind of a rough crowd, was immersed in a dry, thief, homeless group that made her fear that her son would end up removed and back in the foster care system. For now, the baby's with us. Almost 2 babies are a lot of work, but also a lot of joy and laughter. We're about 60. Occasionally I think this is not what we signed up for, but in reality, it's exactly what we signed up for. Most folks, when they have a kid or multiple kids, have a bunch of expectations. Part of what makes it interesting is that kids come with their own personalities, software, journeys, whatever you want to call it, can make for a wild, interesting 20 years. Story 7. My husband and I adopted my brother's 2 kids. At the time, the male was 2 and the female was 6, and their sister, 4. Our oldest was violent and to herself and towards me. She never acted out that way around my husband, which always made me feel as though I was doing something wrong. Maybe we weren't a good fit. Maybe I was too young. Maybe she was better off with her foster family. I would spend every night in tears, fearful that we were doing more harm than good because she never acted out that way before the adoption. She was reading by 3, eating up chapter books before we could introduce them properly. We thought she was memorizing street names, but nope. She read them faster than we could most of the times. She was, and still is, a brilliant young lady that shocks people when she speaks. But those fits, it took our dog almost a year to really trust her. At one point, she kicked me so hard in the mouth, I thought I had lost teeth. Therapy and counseling helped more than I could ever say. For both of us, her therapist reminded me that she was hurt by her mother and never knew her father, even to not trust him. She was throwing knives, metaphorically, of course, because she had never really trusted women before. She was wary, and rightfully so. We both worked so hard to develop a healthy relationship, and honestly, we're still putting hours into it. She's almost 10, and honestly, just like me. It's odd. It's like we've always been a family, but it didn't always feel that way. Their birth mom was almost completely deaf. She always had the TV on for the kids with subtitles, so our oldest was reading at a very young age. Our youngest had never been taken out of his car seat, so when he came to us, at 2, the back of his head was completely flat. He was nonverbal until he was about 3, and he would get upset that we couldn't understand him. He and our middle daughter, from another bio dad, were housed together, so their bond was very strong. Even though she isn't biologically related to me, she's still their sister, and we couldn't imagine separating them. All 3 are doing spectacularly well in school. Any delays we thought we would need to address before have completely disappeared. I couldn't be more proud of our little clan. Story 8. My story is a bit different. I was coaching a soccer team and had a kid in the foster system on the team. He was 13. Over the course of the season, my wife and I really got to know him and saw how crappy his foster parents were. At the end of the season, we asked him if he wanted to come live with us instead. It's been 9 years since then. We had rough patches, but for us, it was easy. We're still a young couple, 24 and 27. But his social worker arranged continued funding for us, which eliminated any financial burden. It was an easy decision for us, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat. We've had 4 of his other biological siblings live with us at one time or another as they've aged out of the foster care system. They all have their own unique problems, but all kids do. His 18-year-old sister asked to come quarantine with us, so we've got her staying here now. His brothers and sister are all just extra family. Our biological little ones, 3 and 5, call them all brothers and sister. He's 22 now and almost done with college and hopes to be a police officer. Sadly, my wife and I will be moving out of state soon and we'll miss him like crazy. But now, we've prepared him for life outside of our home. We'll still be there for him, of course, but we're excited to see him thrive independently. His girlfriend of 4 years is pushing him to move to our new state once they both finish school, so they may still be back near us soon enough. Story 9. I fostered 7 and adopted 2. All girls. I got them between the ages of 12 to 15. I took that age because they were hard to place and I knew they were coming with loads of issues. My second to youngest had been a part of a child ring ran by her parents. She was my biggest challenge and still is. She is the human embodiment of Eeyore. She made it through college, got her law degree, passed the bar, and self-commits at least once a year. She's schizophrenic and still One of my middle girls were severely beaten by alcoholic parents, and she has a slight drinking problem and thinks nothing of swatting her kids. She knows if I see one mark on them, or if they say anything, I will take them. The others have mostly self-esteem issues. They are all grown now. I'd do it again. These are my kids, and I love them. I also had one biological daughter and a stepson. The stepson is now the only one I regret. It's definitely not for everyone. Story 10. Mine is now 16. I became dad when they were 5. They got drunk tonight on alcohol they snuck out of our locker room in the basement, screamed at their mother and me for 2 hours, ranted at their younger siblings. Then we called the police to take them to the hospital for the 10th inpatient psych admission and 4th one this year, past 12 months. Less than a month after being released from the last one. They were such a happy kid, but the last 6 years have been hell. They swing from being a great, smart, funny kid with a bright future to rampaging throughout the house at the drop of a hat. There's definitely a mental issue here, but nothing works, and the swings are getting more and more frequent. I worry for them every single day. I love all my kids. I also can't wait for the specific one to turn 18. When they have announced that they're moving to Seattle to live with their boyfriend, because we're just so tired and it doesn't matter how much therapy we pay for and undergo, or how many times they go inpatient. If they'll be happier there, then that's fine by me. Maybe getting out there and failing, God, I hope they don't, will make them take recovery and therapy seriously. I'm terrified I'm going to have to bury them though. It's 4 a.m. I have to open my office in 4 hours, and I'm still sitting on the couch waiting for my wife to get home from the hospital. Nothing's changing, and we're all just so tired. Story 11. My daughter is of a different race, so it was never something we could have hidden if we wanted to. We made a picture book that tells the whole story of her adoption, the trip to China and back, etc. Before she could even speak, we made that part of what we told her. At least once a week, we did that as a bedtime story and continued for many years. It wasn't until age 11 that she really started having some serious questions about abandonment by her birth mom, etc. But it wasn't a total shock because we had introduced it a lot earlier to her. Story 12. My husband and I unexpectedly adopted a 17-year-old. She was on drugs and in a downhill spiral, so we gave her a place full of love, therapy, help, therapy, rehab, and some more therapy with a little love. She healed and became a part of our family. It's kind of odd being only 9 and 10 years older than your kid, but she is still our kid. Also, we are a gay couple and basically knew next to nothing about females and their monthly needs. She never had a loving and stable household with men that didn't hurt her in emotionally and physically ways. So it was one big old learning process for all three of us. But we made it work, and now we are like any other family. Story 13. I became dad to a little girl just after her 2nd birthday, legally stepdad just before her 4th, and divorced her mother just after her 7th. But I remained dad, and I do to this day, and she's 21 now. Her mother is a drunk who had 2 more kids later on with an abusive guy, now ex, who is in jail. The whole time my daughter had me to fall back on. I told her the truth at 15, as I know it, about her biological father who has never attempted to contact her. He has at least 2, if not 3 other children. If she wanted to seek him out, I told her I would help her. Also, she needed to be aware at any time he or those other siblings could seek her out. She looked me in the eyes and said, "No, you're my dad. That's all I want to know." Story 14. We fostered 26 since the 70s. We only took in troubled boys, and I have 3 biological boys. We've had fistfights you wouldn't believe and have been whooped on both sides. But when it comes down to common tasks, they get it done. I own a farm, so there's always work. As the boys got older, they realized it wasn't so bad and told the younger ones to behave. Now I have sons in the military, law enforcement, and academics. And I would take a bullet for each and every one of them. In fact, we just got our final child. She's 15 and wants to be a veterinarian. We keep her plenty busy, and besides wearing my Bobby Orr jersey, I think well to keep her. Story 15. I'm from the other side of this question. I was adopted when I was 5 by a couple of narcissists that adopted children so they could say they did. I was a pretty screwed up kid even by then. They were obviously told that, both being master's plus degree teachers who were determined to fix me. So I got these people in my life that expected adult behavior and decisions from a child. I was slightly physically abused and just wrecked emotionally the entire time. No affection was ever displayed. Their favorite line was, "We put food on the table and a roof over your head. What more could you want?" There was never any type of teachings of life skills like money handling or goal settings. Looking back now, negative feedback was the only way I learned anything. My dad made it clear that I would join the army out of high school. I did, and it was the worst thing I could have done as a screwed up young adult. So just consider what your real motivation is behind adopting children. Are you trying to give them a better life? Or are you just wanting something more complex than your cat to post on Facebook?